Welcome to another episode of STCA's Die Hard podcast. This is an interview with the infamous Kari Hill. And so we're going to have a lovely morning of discussions about Scotties and where Kari started and how she got started in all of this. Like so many of us, you are second generation, correct? Right.
Correct.
And so I'd love to hear how you got started and what makes you love this breed so much.
I think I love this breed because I must have been a Scottie in my previous life. I feel like I have so many of their attributes. There must be a Scottie inside me somewhere. But as second generation, my parents started showing dogs. The interest started before I was born. In 1964, my parents were married, and they wanted a dog because neither of them were allowed to have one. And they looked in the newspaper, and the only thing that they could afford was a Scottish Terrier. So they got a Scottie, and then along came the Vietnam War, and my dad was going to be drafted and join the Navy. And he got stationed in the Baltimore area for a while for training. And mom was looking for things to do and saw an ad in the newspaper for a dog show and decided just to go check it out. And that's where she met a gentleman by the name of Stuart Gettle. He's Stewart's. And he kind of took her under the wing, and she found it fascinating, and she would go to dog shows with him, and she'd go to his house, and he'd feed them, and she'd help take care of dogs and help groom dogs. And that's really the first person that groomed her. And then when my folks got shipped out to go overseas before I was born, he helped find that dog a home and then said, I'll have a Scottie for you when you get back. And so lo and behold, they came back with two little babies, and we got Mr. Stewart, who I call Mr. Stewart, and I would yell at him, Stewie, and then along he passed, and along came Murdoch. Stewart was a dog that just got too big, and Murdoch was a correct size dog, but got his tail caught in a kennel and broke, so he was kind of bent left. I need to look up what his registered name was, because he was from a show kennel out in the Midwest. Anyways, along came growing up with Scotties, and then mom had never lost interest in wanting to go to dog shows. And when we moved to Cincinnati, the lady down the street had top winning dachshunds. She had the number one dachshund in the country in 1975. Told her about the local dog show. My parents went, met Scottie people, got involved with the Scottish Terrier Club of Greater Dayton. It was their first club, and bought a dog from a woman named Cass Ridgely, and her kennel name was Wayridge. And I recently found the receipt. My mother is historian and librarian, and this bitch's name was Abigail, Wayridge Abigail. And I found Abigail's notebook recently, and in it is all of the handwritten letters between my mom and Cass, and the receipt, and she cost us $750. And she had just had a litter. There was a section. We didn't quite understand that. And my parents started grooming her, and she had, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 points, no majors, but 5 or 6 points. And they proceeded to be involved in the Dayton Club. I think my dad was president for some time, and mom did the newsletter, and they were full on, and we're just growing up. My sister and I sitting there watching the dogs at the dog show. But yeah, Abigail, she had a section, and finally, after 25 shows or something, I believe it was Merle Taylor took my dad aside, because my dad was the handler, and my mom, so Tom Hill was the handler, and Charlotte Hill was the groomer, and Merle Taylor took my dad aside and said, you actually have a nice bitch, but she had a section and she has no furnishings. Go home, 6 months later, come back, and you'll do fine. And that's exactly what they did. And they got furnishings, and she finished lickety split. So the first litter they had was 6 males. And I can remember back then, I think our temperaments were a lot harder and a lot rougher than they are now. I think the breeders in general have bred sweeter, nicer dogs, and we don't have the snarly and the growly and the the snap offs that we used to see in the rings. You just don't see that as much and as frequently anymore. But these 7 males at about 7 weeks started to kill each other, and 6 males at 7 weeks. And we had 6 different pins and boxes and 4x4s throughout the house, and it was interesting. But kept the first dog named Stuart, ChartHill Royal Stuart, and it just kind of went from there. I did not have really much interest in showing dogs. They got 2 additional foundation bitches from Jenny Lucan, and I think we need to interview her. We need to put her on the list. Jenny Lucan, she is Colwick, and she sold us 2 bitches, Colwick Primetime, which is Allison, and Colwick Time After Time, which is Rachel. And Rachel was bred to an Amsterdam dog. I can't remember the name of it. I have to look it up. I am not good at pedigrees. Mom could rattle off every name there was. Should have my books here. Anyways, she produced 1 singleton puppy named ChartHill Worthy of Colwick, who was Bosworth. And I think they were blessed early on in their, and that dog was probably born around 1984, 85 at that point. And I think they were blessed with having like the dog, and he did a phenomenal amount of winning, and he was bred to many bitches, and he is the foundation of ChartHill. And everything really comes from Bosworth. And so by the time I was done with college, I was on my own, living in another town in Indiana, small town, and Mom was traveling from Cincinnati and not too far out of the way where I was living, headed to a show in Marion, Indiana. And she said that Dad couldn't go. It was Valentine's weekend, and could I go with her and help show the dogs? She had an open bitch and she had a puppy bitch, and she needed somebody take the puppy bitch back in. So that little bitch was a Bosworth daughter, Punky, ChartHill Worthy Endurance, and she was called that because she got parvo and survived. So she was ChartHill Worthy Endurance, and her eyes would cross. Like, it did affect her vision. Like, she'd look at you, like one eye would go in and one eye would go the other way. But and she was Punky because sick, like all her hair stood up on her head. So that was like, that's her name. And I took the bitch in, and Bob Moore, who is famous for not allowing bait in the ring and squeakies and things like that. Always thought as a curmudgeon. But anyways, Mom says, oh, I don't think we're going to win here. Cindy Cook is here with her Amsterdam dogs, and she always wins. And so she took the open bitch back in, and I took the puppy bitch back in, and I went winner's bitch and best of winners. And I said, oh, this is fun. And Mom's like, well, is this something you want to do? And I said, well, sure. Because I had groomed and I'd learned to strip, and I could actually do ear tufts early on. I don't know why, but that was like, Mom would always say, can you fix the ear tufts? And so she went over and we bought a table and scissors, and she handed me a bunch of stuff, and I went home with Punky and all my equipment, and that was the first bitch I ever finished. And I also got a group placement under her, under a man named Herman Felton.
Oh, yes.
And Felton actually died at a dog show.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Well, at least he
was doing what he loved. He was old. That was, I would say that was, so I graduated college in the summer of 1989. So that had to be the fall of 1989 that I was showing and had got my first Scottie that I finished. And I probably finished her like in 1990, probably. In fact, I lived I lived on my own in Cincinnati, and my parents had moved already to South Carolina in 1990. And I was having a hard time finding majors for Punky. And I drove all the way to Atlanta. And those from the Southeast will remember the old Jim Miller Park, where they would spray paint the sawdust green, and it would blow around and get all over everything. Those were the days. Spray painting sawdust. That's creative. Yeah. So it was dirty, dusty place at Jim Miller Park. Jim Miller Park's like really nice now, but yeah,
Mhm.
back in the day it was a horse park. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
We're lacking in nice venues, right, these days?
yeah, yeah. I mean, everything used to be outdoors too. I mean, and then there's hardly anything outdoors anymore.
Right, right.
So
Well, that is a lovely story about how you all got started, right? And I think your parents got started similar to my parents, right? Getting their first dog out of the paper and finding somebody they wanted to. So that's I love that and hearing about that. And not only worthy of Colwick, but you all have many of Scotties who've done quite well. Are there any other along the way? And I'm sure it's hard to whittle down to one, but that really their journey or their show career really stuck out to you?
sure. We had a dog named ChartHill Empire Maker.
Mhm.
And he was an interesting acquisition, the way he came about. So along the way of breeding and showing and having multiple litters, and my mom just being so active, she was a school teacher, and when they moved to Cincinnati in 1990, both my sister and I were almost done with school, and so my dad says, don't work anymore, and she just kind of threw her life into the Scottish Terrier. And along the way, in about 1999, I believe, an STCA member that was just really more of a pet owner than anything, named Kathy Vogt, who lived in New Orleans area, reached out to us and said that she was at a point where her kids were older and on their own now, and that she'd always had a Scottie and they were ready for another Scottie, and she wanted to have it shown. She didn't want to show it, and she wanted to have a litter with it. And it was kind of like, are you real? Like, you want to buy a dog and you want us to show it and you want us to have the litter? Like, where did you come from? Well,
Right.
Kathy became, and Paul, her husband, Vogt, who actually sponsors the Fayette Ewing STCA Owner Handler Award at this point, became like some of our dearest friends. And my mom and Kathy would talk 2-3 times a week, and Kathy would always call with, "Let me ask you this." And that's the way she started every conversation. And when you talk to Jeff Dawson, because he ended up showing Alexander, and Alexander Empire Maker ended up winning the Lloyd and was our first Best in Show winner. So what happened was she bought a bitch from us, and Razma Jazz, we call Jazz, and she was gorgeous and finished quickly, but she really just never got big, and she ended up horsening out. And so it was decided that it was probably not the best bitch to be bred. And even though she lived out a wonderful life with Kathy, living the life of luxury, but Kathy said, well, this dog show stuff is fun, and so let's get a dog that we can take all the way. And by that time she had met Jeff, and she's like, yeah, I think, and Jeff was like, yeah, well, if you find something, I'd definitely be interested. And so we attempted to buy a couple of dogs. We bought a dog from Carol Annan, and he finished. He again was not the dog to go all the way. He was a beautiful dog, but just not a Lloyd winner. And so we had a bitch named ChartHill, Moira the Best, and called her Moira, and we bred her to a dog that was given to us by Andrea Duncan. Now, Andrea Duncan got her dogs from Carol Annan's sister named Sandra Burns, and that was, I hope to God I'm getting all this right, but her kennel name, where Carol Annan's kennel name is, what's Carol Annan's kennel name? I'm like lost all of a sudden.
You better.
Oh, to just kill me if I forgot. I should know. It's Iconic Kennel.
Yes, I can see it. I'll think about it. Keep going.
Okay. Well, Sandra Burns went under the name of View Park, and that's where all of the Andrea's dogs came from. And she had a dog that was a puppy, and he didn't even really have a name yet. And he was sired by
Oh my God, sorry.
Loman View. Yes, Loman View. I should know that. still very relative, still shown actively in the United States. There's about once every 2 years, there's a beautiful Loman View dog that's being shown in the United States. So View Park is not the right name. So it was, I don't think that was Sandra Burns's kennel name either. I tell you, I've got a lot of catching up to do to learn my kennels and things like that. But Balgownie Bulletin was the sire of this puppy. And Andrea had it, and Andrea was going through a pretty bad divorce, and we owned a boarding kennel by then, and we ended up taking care of all her dogs for almost 3 months, and she didn't really have any money to pay for that. So she said, I'd like to give you, I'm not really sure I'm ever going to be able to show again, but this puppy's so nice. I'd like to give you his name, to give you him. Right. And his name was, we called him Postman, and he was Dunedin. Andrea, ChartHill Messenger, and we called him Postman, and he did some good winning. Well, we bred Postman to a lot of things because by then we were pretty tightly line bred and we needed a good outcross. And so we bred Moira 3 times, and we got Alexander out of one of the litters and showed him, and Mom's like, this is the dog. And we're like, oh, he's so leggy, he's long. And she's like, no, you don't know. This is the dog. Like, Mom could see a puppy, just know. And interestingly enough, one of the puppies out of one of those breedings went to Steve and Debbie Russell at Woodburn. And that was one of their foundation bitches. And they called her Shenanigans, ChartHill Shenanigans. And her call name was Nanny. So it was really important breedings, those 3 litters. And so lo and behold, there was a litter mate sister who we bred, and she only had 1 puppy and was born dead. And then as she went into trying to heal from that, she went into PIO and had to be spayed. So it was Alex to carry on that torch of those breedings. And yeah, so Alex, I showed him, we took him to Montgomery County weekend. By that time, there was a gentleman by the name of Santiago Pinto who was looking to get a foothold into his handling career. And he landed in Greenville, South Carolina, and worked out of our boarding kennel and lived in our rented house, and he helped groom dogs. And then he actually showed Alex at the Montgomery County weekend, and on the first day under Karen Wilson, Alexander finished his championship. We did keep him in the classes. Just what we did. I know a lot of people have issues with that, but that's what we did. And we showed him that weekend, and then Santiago had a conflict on Saturday. I showed him at Devon, which was a thrill. There's some really amazing this is a dog, he just stood there and like he just showed himself, and then showed him on Sunday, and off he went with Jeff. And Jeff worked on him and took him, and ended up in 2006 he won the Lloyd. And was when we got our first Best in Show, and it was really decided. I mean, I was handling and doing some small time handling for dogs that we bred, and occasionally a Westie and a wire fox at the time, stuff like that. But we knew in order to win the Lloyd, he had to be shown every single weekend. And I worked full time. I've always worked full time, and it was just something that we weren't capable of doing. But that's when Kathy Vogt, so long story longer, that's where Kathy Vogt has always been looking for this dog, and knew that we said, this is the dog, this is Alex. And so she backed and paid for Alex's show career. And so he did win in 2006. And then in 2007, he went to the Garden, he won the breed, he made the cut in the group, which is really exciting. And he also went to Crufts, and because he had gotten award of merit, or it was before select dogs and grand championships existed, or maybe I think it was something like that. Anyway, he got qualified for Crufts, and he went to Crufts. And I think it was Sandra Burns. Burnview was judging. It's Burnview, not View Park. View Park was Margot Parks. I got that wrong. It's Burnview. Everybody's probably watching this dying, going, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna follow my sword. I don't know my stuff. I've got a lot of reading to do. I've been trying. I relied on my mother way too much. So it comes to me when I'm talking. It's kind of like I can speak Spanish, but the more I speak about it, the better it gets. So
Right. Well, I remind people often that it's easier to sit back on your comfy couch than to be interviewed, right? All that information leads.
yes, it's like there, but not like
Right.
air coming out the mouth. So anyway, we did win Best of Breed and went on to the group, and Stuart Plain was judging the group, and we got a group 4. And he was the first American bred Scottie to ever win Best of Breed Scotties at Crufts. So that was pretty awesome that Kathy was willing to take us that far and go that far. And so we retired him and felt like he had done everything he could, and went home to be a stud dog. And he was bred to so many dogs. So and then what's really, really cool is that legacy of Alex still is alive in our line, because you have Alex, who produced a dog called ChartHill Top Billing named Rocky. And Kathy financially backed him, and Jeff won the Lloyd with him. And Rocky was bred and produced a male named ChartHill Premier Performance, Digger. Digger actually won. He was a singleton puppy, and he had an attitude. You could not touch him at all. I mean, he was pissy, and he wasn't an every weekend dog. Like, he wanted to go. He thrived. I mean, he excelled showing at specialties. Like, he was bored with all of the rigmarole of all breed shows, and I showed him some, and we won some groups and some group placements. But at specialties, he just stand there, and he just loved looking at all the other Scotties. And he won a bunch of specialties, and then he won the national rotating specialty under Fred Ferris. And his father, by that time we had select dogs, and his father, Rocky, got it was in 2013, got select dog. And then the next day, which was like the Atlanta specialty, Rocky won the specialty and Digger won select dog. So that was a pretty cool weekend.
Very cool.
And one of the other and so Digger now lives on. So you got this 3 generations of top winning national specialty winners. And mixed in that was another really important dog that Mariano Gatica from Chile helped us acquire. He purchased a dog named Eastman Jovial ChartHill, like 3 kennel names. That's all his name was. And we called him Flyer because he went around the world. He was a Wheaton dog that was a grandson of Gale Force Postscript, Peggy Sue. And this was a dog that Joe Canarney bred. And Mariano contacted Joe Canarney and was able to get this dog. And then we kept him for a long time and finished his IKC championship before he went to Chile and some other countries, and bred him to a lot of different dogs. And I got some top winning, there's a litter that Marcia Dawson bred out of a bitch called ChartHill Jubilee. And she produced this amazing litter that had a dog named Wilder, Silver Streak, Celestial, who I campaigned quite a bit, and another dog named Zappa, who ended up going to South America and didn't produce as much here, but we did have Wilder collected, and I just used his sperm 2 years ago. So it's like 16, 17 years old. And so that's my generation now, and looking to tie it all back in. And there's yet another dog too that's just as important and not to be forgotten is ChartHill Victory at Sea, who is one of the top producing stud dogs ever. In 1999, Terrier Type did give him the honor of producing the most champion get in that year of all the terriers. I forget how many it was like 22 or 23. And I think we've got his frozen sperm, and I think he's up to now alive, he had like 73 champions, and I think he's up to 77 or 78 with his frozen sperm. And just Mom was a master of pedigrees, and I've got a lot of catching up to do, and I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of research and thinking about this different dogs and how you're supposed to put them together, and talking to other experts. I recently listened to Michael Canalizo's interview with Will Alexander. I talked with Celeste Gonzalez, who continually produces Best in Show and National Specialty winning Bassets, and they have similar body types and fronts, with a deep chest and this kind of achondroplastic breed. So how do you get those amazing fronts? And talk to her quite a bit. So yeah, you just keep learning. You just keep learning.
Yeah, I think we often say that, right? If you stop learning, you stop moving forward, right? And so it's continuing and to always teach each other and absorb.
Yeah.
This
I've actually been studying several of our breeders, and I'm just gonna say I'm impressed with your breeding programs, and I've been looking at your pedigrees to see how you continually produce these top winning national specialty winners time after time. And now that I judge, I've had my hands on many of them, and I'm continually impressed with several of our breeders, and really looking at trying to figure out how they're putting their pedigrees together and how they're tying their grandfather, granddaughters, and their lines, so that, I can better understand, like, how are you consistency, producing that consistency.
Yeah.
And entire consistent litters. It's not like, oh, you get like, oh, because it's an outcross, you get one really nice one out of the litter. It's like these litters are consistent.
Right. And that's such an art, right? I think it's Beauchamp, right? Who wrote amazing articles about all of that, and all of these people in different breeds and everything, that are now judges, and they've been on both sides of the leash, if you will, right? On both sides of the table, judging, but they also have such great understanding and knowledge of the intricacies of creating that dog. We don't have the big kennels like we used to, right? Where they can just experiment.
Yeah.
Manner, obviously. And so, and just try this bitch with this dog, and, and different things, and see if it worked or didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, limited to small homes.
I would say I moved to Greenville in 1995. My parents had probably 7 or 8 dogs at the time, but had a great setup. Had a really great setup. And with me there, and with my interest in showing, I ended up living at their house for 15 years. And we had hired help. We owned the boarding kennel at the time, and we had a guy that worked at the kennel there and lived on the property, and also worked and helped us at the house. And we ran like 30 to 40 Scotties, including the puppies, at any given time. And I just think back, and I'm like, I didn't sleep. I don't think I slept. I think I worked full time, and I did dogs full time. So I had 2 very full-time jobs. And there were a lot of great dogs that were finished that came out. We were finishing, 9-10 dogs a year. And but now life is different. I have a handful of house dogs, and my show dogs are my house dogs now. And I'm going to breed a litter once every 2 years. I'm looking at 2.5 now, where I'm saying, okay, well, I got these bitches that I really need to breed. And it's like, okay, I got to get this right. I got this one shot, I got to get this right. And yeah, we have a ton of boys frozen, a ton. Mom was notorious once our frozen sperm was, the whole science of it was dialed in. Yeah, the boys would be collected, frozen, and then placed in a home. And so there's lots of boys that I'm having to reevaluate. Like, maybe they weren't, like, they didn't have amazing show careers because you could only keep 1 or 2 stud dogs, but they're like, wow, they could possibly really contribute when you sit down and look at how they're all interrelated.
Definitely. Well, I think that's where we have to go, right? There's many people, we're in a heritage breed that is, the numbers are struggling, right? And I've had to, I think we all have to do things to look outside the box a little bit, right? Finishing the bitch or placing it with somebody down the road. I have a lovely couple that have one of my dogs, and they aren't very interested in showing, but they're happy to keep him intact. They would, we tried him here in a show, but to throw him out just simply because he doesn't have a championship. And we used to look at that, right? Just like they have to be finished, and that's still a priority. But in this case, for me to just totally ignore him because he simply doesn't have a CH in front of his name, would be a disservice to not only the breed, I think,
Yeah.
but also simply my breeding program. And so, and they're a good couple that are like, yeah, we would love to see if we could breed them and be happy to do that and keep them down the road. Unfortunately, we just bred them to a bitch that pioed out. And so that's the struggle, right? The struggle is
Right.
real.
The struggle is so real. It's scary as all get out. It's scary. I'm mentoring, my mother's legacy is educating and preserving the breed. And I had the honor of being able to judge the national specialty in 2021 at Montgomery. And I had made a promise to her to finish all the dogs that were still in the kennel. She was starting on dementia. It was getting more difficult, but I made that promise. We bred back to, we had a litter with someone she mentored, Pam Murray, who is now doing great and is super active in the Tampa Club. And we bred this bitch that we placed with her twice, and mom, one of them finished. I thought she was crazy. It's just because life isn't like that anymore, and she's still living in the big kennel mentality. But I made a promise and I finished them all. So we had the good fortune of winning, because both those litters were so large. That year I won the owner handler award, the stud dog, and the brood bitch award, and had asked Lori Kelly, the president at the time, to say some words. And it was like something came over me. Like I spoke like I was an outer body experience. And because I looked at that banquet of all those people, the 100+ people, and it's like, she helped you. She helped you. She started you. She was on the phone with you at 3 a.m. She was sending you articles. Like, she touched so many lives, and her legacy. And she's one of the few people that have received the STCA Good Sportsmanship Award. And it's because of that legacy of education and preservation that we're foremost with her, that I still feel like there's a giant shoes to fill, and I want to do that. We have a gal up in North Carolina that comes from horses, doesn't really want to ride anymore like she used to, says, her body just can't take it, and loves the Scottie. And she started off with just a dog that she was able to acquire, because we as breeders are so protective of our dogs. You gotta go through hoops, and there's so many more people wanting dogs. And so, she's showing up at the dog show. She's doing what she needs to do. I'm talking to her on a regular basis, and, she's our future. She's younger than I am. I know she's younger than I am. She's probably more your age. I think she has a daughter about your age. I told her flat out, we need you. If you want to do this, I'm willing to give you all the education I can. And it's up to you what you do with it. She's in a place right now where she's got some dogs that aren't finishable, and she's bred them because she didn't know any better. And but what she does with her knowledge, I think she's on the right track, and so we'll go from there. And that's my goal. Is I'm not going to show as much. I've got a dog out with a handler. I haven't done that in a long time because I don't want to go every weekend. Life's different. So how can I keep contributing? I can see those people and say, hey, I'm going to make the time. If I want to stay home, then I can talk on the phone and I can text message on a regular basis. And so, yeah, I'm going to get burned. Sure. No deed goes unpunished at some point, but then at the same time, you have to say, well, I can't control you for my whole life. I'm putting you through school. You're going to graduate, and you're going to have your own breeding program, and you're going to do your own choices. And I take Pam Murray as an example. My mom gave her education and information, and she has a knowledge. She breeds racing pigeons, and she's able to translate that into. So if somebody comes from horses and breeding horses, they have a background where, how do you translate and take that knowledge, So Pam's got her first litter that's all, hers and her decisions. And it's just so exciting to be able to see somebody thrive like that, and then to always be there in the background, just like that I got you. You're, you go. I'm that parent up in the stands, that's my kid,
Exactly.
I don't want to be in the interview, and I don't want to be on the podium, but yay.
Well, I think that's where we're at. I mean, we all can give examples, right? I can give examples of where my mom was burned or different things like that, but I don't think that should stop us
But
from.
that's something. They get frustrated. You get frustrated.
Well, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I will definitely say it makes me more apprehensive or cautious or, we've all changed things because of those experiences, but there are still those. And, I have a young couple that I'm working with, and they've, their first bitch won winner's bitch of the national specialty. And I had to go back and say, not everybody's first dog does this. Just so you know that.
One of the people that my mom took under her wing early on in the early 2000s is Rod Ott.
Oh, yeah.
And sold him ChartHill Bravo, who they became his kennel name, and he's partnered and married Pilar, who came out of Bouvier's, and so successful. And it's just kind of like so proud of them and just so excited for them and everything they've done. And it's so cool. I one of my best show memories was at the Dayton Specialty in 2013. I was showing ChartHill Top Billing. It was before he went off with Jeff. And I also had a class bitch in the bred by class. Ken McDermott was judging. There were 14 bitches in the bred by class because you'll understand why I counted. So we're all lined up. We fill the ring, like 3 sides of the ring.
Yeah, without the show.
Ken McDermott goes around the ring and looks down the line at every dog, and he takes a deep breath and he stands in the middle of the ring and he goes, this is one of the best bitch classes I have seen in a long time. This is going to take me a while. So I want all of you to relax, and I will not judge you if I'm not looking at you. And I will make sure that you know that I'm looking at you. So please relax your dogs. And then he always has an interesting procedure, how he goes over dogs, goes down and backs, and then he sorts them out. But don't ever give up. Just because you're sorted in a certain place doesn't mean, oh, I'm winning or I'm not winning. And you really don't know what he did. And we're just sitting there, I'm sitting on the ground and playing with the Katie. And I looked around and I counted, because he's like it's a class. So there's 14. And as I counted, I looked at all 14 people. And all but 2 people in that bred by class, my mom and dad were somehow instrumental in their breeding and becoming, whether it was being there for them when they were sick, or being there to teach grooming seminars, or being there to sell them dogs, or being there to provide them stud services and letting them take the pick puppy, and getting a puppy back and coordinating that way. But I thought that's what it's all about. And that was when it really hit me in 2013. I had just become approved to judge. And I'm like, this is the legacy. This is the legacy right here. And I think it was a real blessing to be able to understand that what my goal was to go forward, to do that. And to just try to continue to fulfill those shoes and do that. Mom would say, oh, we need to do a grooming seminar. We would do, with the pet resort, we had a space with a training room that we could do grooming seminars. And she's like, we have to do one every year. I'm like, oh my God, my whole weekend's going to be wasted. But it's not. You would get 20 people come, and basically the fee covered the printing of materials and the grooming manuals before the STCA had a manual. Right. Covering lunch for 2 days, handling lesson, so it's what she did. It was all about education. She was a teacher. Her grandfather was a teacher. Her father was a teacher. He taught people how to fly planes during World War II. Oh, wow. She was born on an Air Force base during World War II. So it's just there. And I knew that's the legacy I have to live.
Well, and it's those people. I mean, there are so many individuals out there that are in education. That just for some reason there's a correlation between educators and getting into dogs and whatnot, or have a background somehow. But it's to those people and those of us who carry on that legacy, right, for that education piece. And I think people who eventually hopefully watch this, need to know that we are all there to help and listen, but they also need to come engage, right? Just for somebody, I mean, that brings up a question, right? There's a couple questions here, but as I think your journey and your mom and dad's journey, right, isn't just about the dogs, it's about the people too.
It's the people. Our journey is the people. Right. The dogs were the catalyst for these amazing people that I consider very close in my life. Yeah. never would have known them. I mean, you and I mean, you were a junior, full of yourself, pushing us all, do you remember, when we showed at Devon one year and John Sim was the judge and we were all in the ring and there's a picture of it and I don't remember who I had and I don't remember you have, but we all started like pushing in on him and making the circle around the ring smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and everybody just pushing on each other. I mean, I think that our camaraderie has gotten so much better these days, but that was like in the early 2000s. I mean, I don't know if I honestly, I can't remember who I had, but I remember that. And John was so old and shouldn't have been judging in the first place, a class of, and that's when we had 100 dogs at Devon, because we had close to 200. I mean, Jerry Rosman would overdraw, like the next day or whatever. Maybe that's when I was showing Lily in 99, 2000. But yeah, I remember standing next to you and we're just like looking at each other like, okay, I'm gonna go further. I'm gonna go a little further,
99, 2000, it might have been at a Loman View bitch.
Probably, yeah.
Loman View bitch, and we called her Nikki, but yeah, it might have been. But yeah, those are the days. I mean, I'm old school, right? I love terriers in the grass. I love the Christmas, this interview is prior to Montgomery, right? So talking in that direction, and the crispy mornings that we used to have, sometimes the mornings are warmer than we like these days. But in the old days when they used to bring everybody to the middle, where you'd have a huge breed or a class of bitches or dogs, and the judges would just walk around the outside, right? They don't encourage that anymore, but you could just feel the tension.
Oh yeah.
Energy, and see the dogs on their tippy toes being true terriers.
It's true. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I enjoyed that. But so somebody new, getting back to this, as as your mom mentored so many and as you continue to do that, what is your suggestion? What is your recommendation if you could tell people 2 words of advice getting into this, and they're coming to you for a new dog, or they're saying, where do I go to get a new dog, to get my show dog or get started in this?
I think you have to be a bit of a honey badger these days. You have to be the squeaky wheel. It's, when you see the same people winning all the time, it's hard to approach them. It is. It's a little intimidating. You're just trying to remember their name. And I think that you just have to take a really deep breath and look at the time and say, all right, they're done showing. And just walk up and say, hey, my name's Kari Hill. I'm really in love with this. And I think this is something I want to do. And I saw your dog in the ring and it was really pretty. And I was wondering if I could see it up close and see if you can't. I mean, that's the thing, is that we love talking about our dogs. I mean, we just do. Like, it's just what we do. We just love talking about our dogs. There's a few people that are extremely shy. And maybe you have to email them later, if you didn't feel like, if you really like the way their dog looked. But I want to encourage everyone to go to the AKC website. And if you have to do a little searching, it's not super easy to find, but under past webinars, during COVID, the AKC had the judges education people do their judges education seminars, their PowerPoint presentations as webinars. And and they were interactive. And if you signed up as a judge, if you signed up and you participated live and you answered the questions and you took the little test at the end, you got a certificate for some points, because there were no dog shows, and yet they wanted to continue the ability for people to continue to pursue their judging aspirations. But Kathy Brown did the Scottie judges education webinar, and it's free. And if you have any interest in showing, you need to watch that webinar. It's 90 minutes. It's an investment, and you will learn what a Scottie is supposed to look like. There's pictures, there's explanations. It's interactive. Kathy is hilarious when she talks. She's engaging. She's a teacher. She's an educator. So if this is what you want to do, go there to learn about a Scottie. We are all about videos and media, and it's hard for us to read books. And, if you really don't, I think sometimes if you can look at different sources of media, Showsite magazine, if you go to their website and you put in their search engine, the Scottish Terrier, it'll bring up every article ever published about a Scottish Terrier. And you can read those, but maybe if you watch that webinar first and you find that on the AKC site, then you can have a concept, and then you can go to other sources, other mediums, and then maybe you can also start talking to people. And when they say, this dog has good layback, and a decent length of upper arm, but the angulation for the upper arm isn't where it should be, you'll understand what that means.
Right.
And so if you get the opportunity to buy a show puppy, remember that if it doesn't have a point yet, it's a potential dog. So you're buying a potential, like the bites could go off. You have to understand that you can't hold that against anybody. It is what it is. Like I said, when Kathy Vogt was on the search to find her show dog, we got a dog from Carol Annan. We finished him. He's a great little show dog, but not a national specialty winner. He just wasn't, he's just a nice dog. So you have to understand that sometimes you'll get your first dog is, Braddock won 100 best of breeds with that ChartHill Bravo, so proud of him. I love the picture where he was holding his 100th ribbon when the dog in his arms. Just such a proud moment. I have that picture on my bookshelf. But you may not get that. That might not be your first dog. So, and then, like I said, you have to, we said at the beginning, then you have to learn about breeding, and, got to talk to a lot of people about that. So.
And as we spoke about earlier, that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? That's not for the week.
A whole separate podcast.
Exactly. Very cool.
And I'm not the one to be interviewed because I'm still figuring it out. I relied on my mother way too much. I did not do my homework in this. It's just like, okay, we have these puppies. I'll groom them. I'm going to show them. That's what I did, and that's a huge deficit for me.
I reference my mom often too. Yes, my mom came from farming side of things. I think that gave her a whole nother set of.
My mom was a voracious reader, though. Like our library of dog books, she read every single one of them, and I've just never really been a reader. And I have sometimes a hard time reading a whole bagpiper. I'm just not a reader. Maybe it's just a product of today's environment. I don't know, but so that's why I want to talk about that webinar being on the AKC site. You sit down and watch it.
And I appreciate that, because that webinar is so hidden. Sometimes people forget about that. So
most people don't even know it exists. And I went to find it for somebody, and it took me a good minute to find it.
I think that's one of the things that I appreciated during the COVID time is we looked outside the box as far as how to reach out to people. Because, there was I don't know if it was the same one, but I was listening to Kathy Brown webinar, maybe, I think it was. And it was just nice that you could be wherever you were in the world and listen to those things, listen to the podcast, listen to whatever. So instead of always having to go and have the expense of going to these things, because sometimes that can just be too much for people, right? And so I think it's, in my practice, we always talk about meeting the person where they are. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Very good. I highly encourage anybody that has an interest or a history of dog shows in general, to listen to the Will Alexander YouTube podcasts. He started in COVID as well.
Very cool.
It just became hey, let me call you on a Zoom call and see what you're up to, hey, can I interview you? And I think his first interview was a gentleman by the name of George Alston. And he changed my life because I had the fortune of attending his handling seminars. After he retired, he traveled to the United States teaching handling, a 2-day intensive seminar. And I went to 3 different seminars that he put on. And that was a big deal.
Talk about somebody else who's definitely had an impact. I went to a George seminar too, and have sat down with him.
Yeah, actually his seminar, the last seminar he ever did, he was begged and begged and begged. He's still alive, is on AKC TV. And it's long. And if you want to show dogs, you need to invest the time in watching George Alston on AKC TV. It's phenomenal. He didn't miss a beat. It was like I was 27 again at my very first seminar with my very first show dog. I actually, after going to his seminar, that was back when we had the big video cameras, and the guy I was dating at the time would always video me and take his video camera and video me in the ring. And I can remember coming home going, well, the first night I went with a friend, and the first night we came home after the seminar, and I had recorded on videotape some Westminster on broadcast. And so we started watching those, picking apart some of the top handlers on all those things that we learned. And then like afterwards, I was watching some of mine that, this boy I was dating at the time. And I'm like, oh, I think we need to erase all these.
Like, we don't need to have this.
Need to see me and like losing my, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's go back, since I come from the sports side, we definitely analyze things like that. We're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, I mean, getting on that, you've mentioned, your parents, you've mentioned different people along the way. You've mentioned the impact that George had on you, George Olson. Anybody else?
I think the impact, I'm drawing a bit of a blank, but the impact is the fancy to me. I get away from dog shows and I get involved in my life, and I get back to a dog shows in Raleigh over Labor Day weekend, and I'm like, I just thrive here. I just love these people. And, the best friends in the whole world, the Marsha Dawsons and the Barb Zinks and the Rod Otts, who my mother taught in the mid-90s and got them started. And I was able to continue those friendships with them. They all still have an impact on me. Marsha Dawson specifically, just I'll call her out. She it was in 20, I guess it had to be 2021. Was it 20? No, the puppies were born in 2022. No, I guess it was in 2019. I don't time, whatever. Sitting there playing bingo with her at the STCA hospitality event, and sitting with her and talking with her, and Lisa Hills was there, and she starts asking me about my frozen sperm with Wilder. And what did I have it? This is ChartHill Silver Streak. This is the dog that she whelped, and we were listed as co-breeders. Was one of our puppies back. We split the litter evenly. I got Celeste, Wilder, and Zappa out of that litter, and she got Haley, Gina, and she's probably sitting there watching me and telling me what the other one's name is. But anyway, they were flyer puppies, Eastman, Jovi at ChartHill. And she's asking me, like, the longevity that we've had in the line. My dogs live till 14, 15 years old, and I want to get back to that. And I want to tie into those older dogs, and the Caseys and the Clippers and the Flyers. And just listening, talking to her, I go home and I look at that pedigree, which I hadn't looked at in forever. What a huge impact. I looked at that pedigree and I'm like, yeah, that's who I need to breed my bitch to. I have a digger daughter that's an outcross because she was a puppy back out of some other breedings. And I'm like, yeah. And now there were 5 pups in the litter. One of them, their tail laid flat on their back, so he's not shown. But the other 4, Marsha just finished the 4th one this last weekend, Isaac. Yay. And so what are your mate like? So who has impact on you? It's like, well, if you connect and you talk and you think outside the box and you keep up, your friendships and you talk dogs, you never know what kind of impact you're going to have. And so there you go.
I think that's it, right? It's all about the community. I think we need to get some of that. And I think some of you all you're in the Southeast now, but the community within the Midwest, and for me, Midwest it's a little different, but so Ohio, Michigan, all those guys seem to come together more and create community. They have quite a few of them out there. So bravo to all them. I think those of us, out here on the West Coast, we're anywhere from 7 to 16 hours apart.
Yeah, and that's the hard. I mean, you really, we talk about it. You just have to, be willing to. There's people that really just aren't able to go very far for breeding programs, and I listen to Pilar she did a breeding recently where the dog she wanted was being shown in Ohio, and what she went through to get the bitch bred. And you've just gotta it's like, so you get your first dog, you've mentored, you've talked to people, you've gone to handling classes. Okay, now you're a champion. Now you're going to breed this dog. And and a lot of times as a first timer, you might be sold a dog and not a bitch, because you need to prove yourself. So keep that communication, keep that honesty with that breeder that you got it from. If you feel weird about something, call them up and say, hey, I'm feeling weird. And just use those words. And probably, our lives are so busy and so fast paced, we probably don't even realize that we're weird, or that, I just had a job that I was remote for everybody. And was one girl on our team that if you didn't say, good morning, how you doing, before you Teams messaged her, she thought she did something wrong.
Right.
And so people are weird. So if this is, a lot of people don't really realize how hard. I mean, it's hard, and it's a communication. Yeah, it's a fancy, and we pack our cars and we go and we do our thing, and maybe we sit in our corner and we watch, but you got to communicate too. It's hard. It's hard.
A lot of us, there's a reason we're with dogs, right? Communicating to each other is more difficult and challenging. So we always have to keep that in mind. And I mean, I often tell people the worst thing somebody can say is no. Right. And so, but at least you've asked. Otherwise, you never know. Yeah. So there's so much more we could talk about here. So much more. And maybe down the road, we'll do another one. But for now, for somebody, whether they have a dog or not, and maybe that's your advice, going to their first Montgomery ever, what would you suggest?
Bring every kind of clothes there is, rain and summer. So I think if you're going to your first Montgomery because you're interested in Scotties, you have to go to the independent specialties. You have to go to the hospitality. You have to go, maybe not to the dinner, because the dinner we do kind of pair off, but the Thursday night hospitality is pretty amazing. The STCA does an amazing job with focusing on community and having the host hotel and having a hospitality night. And you have to go to the sweepstakes because that's really where people are most relaxed. We're all congregated, and because it's the STCA's priority. I mean, I've served on the board 1 year, and it is a conscious, long thought out decision on having our host hotels and having certain requirements for the host hotel so that we can have the Scottie community and have the ability for people to come together easily to converse and creating that catalyst. Because when you go to Montgomery, it's so spread out, and Scotties, and even in the old days at Bluebell and at Temple, Scotties love to be off by themselves on the very end, and you just don't really get to meet the people. And people are sitting in chairs, and they got their catalogs, and they're just not as approachable. So that's what you got to do. That's where you're going to meet the people. Everybody's grooming together. Everybody's hanging out together. Everybody's got their dogs on the table and they're hanging out. And that's probably the most time that they're least stressed of the whole weekend.
Right.
Because they're not fighting the elements. They're not fighting a generator. They're not struggling to see what dog is in the ring, So that would be my suggestion.
Definitely. I appreciate that. Thank you. And everybody definitely listen to that. That's great advice. Go immerse yourself, right? Get in it.
Yeah. And I do that. And I can't emphasize enough, you're on the board now, you've completed 1 year. You're going to go back, hopefully when, life has been very full for the last 3 years. So it made sense for me not to, go back for right now, but I have aspirations of being back involved because the mission and values of the STCA have the people in the community and the dogs at heart. And there's a lot of tough decisions that have to be made. And, I think there's better transparency with the STCA now, and how hard it is to bring community, whether it's at a Montgomery or even have that sense of community at a floating rotating. And maybe you have to go, and because of your budget or your travel, you have to watch and wait for it to come near you. The rotating's going to be in the West Coast this year, hasn't been out there in quite some time. It's going to be a great congregation of dogs in April of 2025. So if you live out on the West Coast, you need to think about going and it's just going to be a Scottie event. So
and have a weekend towards the coast. It's always a great.
And all that information. So 6 years from now, when you're watching this video, go to the STCA website, and all the information of where the next one is going to be is put there. They do a great job in getting that information to just anyone interested. It's an easy website to navigate. Not as easy on a cell phone, but really good on the laptop.
We're working on the cell phone piece.
I know you are. I know. It just baby steps.
It is. And technology moves faster than we can. So,
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time, and thank you for helping us out to get the word out. And again, everybody, Kari Hill, thank you.
Thank you so much for the honor. Bye.